Welcome everyone to our February Sunday service. We did this previously in October of last year, and we'll try to do it every couple of months or so, where we're able to get together every Sunday for a few weeks just to reinvigorate your practice and help you with your inspiration. Today we're going to talk about doubt. This is considered one of the obstacles to our spiritual growth and one of the obstacles to our yoga practice, and it is a very common thing. No matter what anyone tells you, no matter who they are, where they are on their path, doubt comes in from time to time, and it comes in many different forms. I decided it was important to talk about this because a number of students in the Kriya Yoga Apprenticeship Program, and even a few people on the Patreon site, our Patreon community, Journal of a Kriya Yoga Teacher, have been going through some difficult times. Some of them are self-imposed, but some of them are out of their control. And what I've been hearing is that going through these difficult times, they often lose their ability to meditate, or they don't want to meditate, or they don't think it's worthwhile or that it's helping them. Or sometimes, and we'll talk about this a little bit later, they're meditating very well, and what's happening is situations are coming up mentally and emotionally which are disturbing to them, and so they decide that meditation isn't helping, and so they want to quit. So first I want to take a moment to talk about the idea of doubt and how it gets in the way of our practice when difficult things come our way. Now, one student wrote to me and was going through a really surprisingly difficult time. Something happened within their life that just came out of nowhere. And because of anger and bitterness, they've been avoiding meditation. And the student asked, knowing my history, having lost a loved one and a few other interesting, not so enjoyable things happening in my life, whether I quit meditating, or whether I lost faith, or whether I had doubt when these things occurred. And I told him, I said, well, first of all, I tend to be more of a spiteful person. So even though life seemed to be kicking me in the head, I was saying to myself, you know what, life, you're not going to win. I'm going to keep doing this. You're not going to make me stop. So a little bit of my spitefulness came out and allowed me to keep going. But also, when I started experiencing more difficulties, I had had about 18 years of consistent practice. And I thought about this the other day, about something very simple and silly. When you get in the habit of doing something, you find yourself doing it no matter what. And using the example of the 18 years of experience I had in meditation, well, even though I was going through difficult times, because I had those 18 years of experience, it's as if there was just such a momentum to that practice that I found myself doing it anyway. In the same way that I found myself brushing my teeth before I went to bed and taking a shower in the morning. You know, I'd had 40-some years of that experience, so it's just something I naturally did, or how some people always make coffee in the morning. Well, in a very basic way, we have to keep in mind that a lot of the power of our spiritual practice to get us through difficult times often comes from our previous habit-building process of doing those practices. So that's one thing to consider. Another thing to consider, I asked him, I said, well, maybe like me, when you started to go through this difficult situation, you had in your mind that promise that all popular pop culture yoga gives you, which is that if you just practice yoga or Ayurveda or live the right life or think the right way, that difficult things aren't ever going to happen to you. And that was something I had to face. And I told him that some of the difficulties I had challenged my faith beyond anything I could even imagine. I can't imagine anything else challenging my faith more than it had already. But I had also had the belief that, well, I shouldn't have to go through this because I'm a meditator, because I'm a yogi, because I'm a spiritual person, because I try to be a good person. And so when I had bitterness and anger, that's where it was coming from for me. So I had to work through that. And of course, as you go through life, you recognize that sometimes good things happen to bad people and bad things happen to good people, and that's sort of the way it goes. But the whole purpose of our spiritual practice is not to get caught up in what's happening in our life. And that is a hard statement to swallow. We can hear it in good times. We can say, yes, of course, we don't want to get too distracted by our life. But when something really difficult comes our way, it's easy to forget that. And what we have to remember is that these teachings, these philosophies that these spiritual masters have discussed and shared, they're meant to be considered and taken seriously at all times. So if in the Yoga Sutras it states that the yogi is meant to endure pleasure and pain while seeking knowledge, well, that means all the time. That doesn't mean just when it's convenient for you. And this is part of the maturation process. And what usually happens is our little ego wants to be in control. And it feels in control when things are going well. But part of the process of developing faith is learning to trust the process of life. And in order to trust the process of life, that can happen a few ways. You can develop faith a few ways. You can trust the process of life a few ways. Number one, you can simply do it. And we'll talk about how to simply do it in a minute. But you can simply do it. Or number two, you can get kicked around enough that you can get kicked around enough. And if you don't succumb to bitterness and anger, you'll get kicked around enough that you'll crack open and you'll naturally develop that capacity for faith and trust in the wholeness of life. And that's one way to do it. That's one way I did it. So there's nothing wrong with it, at least for me. Another way that you can do it is simply to start trusting. And when you meditate, you can begin meditating upon either the mystery of life. This is your contemplation process after you've gone through the meditation techniques, after you've settled yourself down and you're able to turn within. You can contemplate the mystery of life, or you can begin practicing expanding your awareness and wondering, what would it be like if I trusted that maybe I can't understand everything? Maybe the things that are occurring can't be obvious to my little human expression in consciousness. And that can bring up fear because you want to know. That's why many people get involved in meditation, philosophy, and religion. They want to know. But the crazy thing about it is that what it leads you to is the ability to embrace the fact that you don't know. And you've heard that cliche over and over again, and you learn to make peace with that. You can contemplate the largeness of life. You can contemplate the earth. You can contemplate all the life that's going on outside in nature. You can contemplate the vastness of the solar system, of the galaxy. And if you keep researching before you contemplate, well, Google how big is the universe, and you'll start to get the sense of just how immense this life experience is. And if you can contemplate that expands your mind and your consciousness, and somehow it gives greater perspective. I wish I could describe to you just how it works, but you kind of have to do it. And in time, you start to see the play of life, the ups and the downs, as something that you might not understand. And what would it be like if you could be okay with that, if you could relax into that? And the best way to do it is to practice that during your meditation. Take that 20 minutes, 30 minutes, an hour every day, and just decide during this time, I'm going to let go of everything that my ego thinks it needs to understand. I'm going to let go of all the pain that I see in the world. I'm going to let go of all the stuff I want. I'm going to let go of all my cravings and desires. I'm going to let go of all of my bitterness and spitefulness. And I am just going to be present for that brief period of time. I'm going to do it, whatever it takes. That's what I'm going to do. And I'm going to wonder about these things, about these bigger picture things. And I'm going to free my mind into it. And I'm going to accept what realizations come to me within that. And of course, if you want, after you're done, you can go back to being upset and bitter and doubtful. But what will happen is, if every day you give yourself that brief window of time, it'll start to kind of color the rest of your life. It'll start to seep into your other experiences. And this does take time, it does take effort, and it does take courage. Being a yogi, being a meditator, exploring the spiritual side of yourself takes courage. It takes courage, because you're going to have to learn and accept things that are not common to the rest of society. They're not going to be common to what you feel is important, what you've been conditioned to feel is important. And we can always go back to the Bhagavad-Gita. Those of you who are in the Kriya Yoga Apprenticeship Program, we've already started talking about this, but you can review it on your own. You can get Mr. Davis's copy of The Eternal Way and read the chapter on the Despondency of Arjuna. In the Despondency of Arjuna, it's the beginning of everyone's meditation practice, their spiritual practice, and we hit plateaus where we will go through the despondency of Arjuna again and again, but at different kinds of levels. What is the despondency of Arjuna in the Bhagavad-Gita? Well, the Bhagavad-Gita is an allegory for our spiritual life. And at the very beginning, what happens? Arjuna, you, the spiritual aspirant, becomes aware of what needs to be done to wake up. And he is confronted with the challenge of facing his self-consciousness, his resentment, his deluded mind, his small-mindedness, his egocentricity. And he's essentially told he has to slay those things. And to him, he says, but this is all I've known. These are my family. These are my grandfathers, my cousins, my brothers. I can't slay them. And Krishna says, well, you have to. And of course, Arjuna says, no. And he throws down his bow and he says, I give up. And Krishna, the Supreme Infinite Consciousness, the representation of our spirit, comes in and says, Arjuna, this is beneath you. You are of noble birth. You need to stand up and act as though you are of noble birth. And in a way, for us, what Krishna is saying, what the Spirit is saying, is that we are soul, we are spirit, we are infinite, we are beyond this transient form. Now, this transient form has come from us, but it is transient. It is not who we are. It is an expression. And what we're doing with our spiritual practice and our yoga is turning our awareness back within to recognize the source of spirit, the source of spirit. And that is not something that you're going to be able to talk to your friends about. That's not something you're going to be able to demonstrate in the meditation groups that you go to. It's not something that's going to be obvious to anyone around you. It is a personal process of recognizing what is true, and it's a personal process that all of us who are spiritually inclined will go through. That everyone, Ramana Maharshi, Paramahansa Yogananda, Swami Shri Yukteswar, Raging Davis, all these people have recognized this, and they've learned to live from spirit. In my own life, one of the greatest realizations I had was this. Even though I was engaged in the spiritual path, I had the perfect guru for myself. I had very good supportive relationships. Now, of course, it took me some years to figure out how to get those, and I had to weed a few of them out. But I had everything. And I, in a way, because I had all those things, I was identified with the form that support was coming through. My guru, my partner, my friends, the people who support this work. As though the support that was coming was from people. And one day, something happened. It occurred to me that where the support was coming from wasn't from people, wasn't from the personality of Roy Eugene Davis, wasn't from the body and mind of my partner, wasn't from the body and mind of my spouses, wasn't from anyone. It was directly from spirit. And that was kind of an eye-opener. Now, the bodies, the minds, the personalities were vessels for that. But if it wasn't coming through those bodies, minds, or personalities, it would have come through another. And I remember Paramahansa Yogananda when he had lost his mother. And he was inconsolable with grief. And he had had an experience where he used the expression Divine Mother. Divine Mother came to him and said, I've always been with you. I've always taken care of you. You think it was just through this one body of this one mother in this lifetime, but I've watched over you through countless lifetimes, through countless mothers. And he goes on, or she goes on and on about this. And in that experience, it was revealed to him that there is this spirit, there is this wholeness, which was there for him, whether in a body or not a body. And in this life, there will always be a rising and falling of bodies, of minds, of personalities. Once the role within the world is played, then that will fall away. And then a new experience will be revealed. So one of the things that I'd like to challenge you to do is begin to wonder and contemplate how support comes to you and where it comes from, where it really comes from. Not people, but what is the source that it comes from, and that is your spirit. And if you can direct your attention to that in meditation, wonder about that and give yourself permission to see it, because that's the other hard part about all of this, is that it can be hard to see or accept those things because there's something going on, conditioning or your little sense of self or whatever you want to call it, that doesn't want to admit that. It wants to focus on what it can see, what it can touch. And part of our process is just learning to quit thinking that way, to let go of that. And sometimes it happens naturally through life experience or through meditation or through realizations. Other times it simply has to happen by a choice that you make, and you have to develop that understanding. You have to cultivate it. And when you start to do this, you begin to do what Mr. Davis would always say to me. He would say, you have to learn to live out of your consciousness, or learn to live out of your spirit. When it came to providing for myself or doing my work, whether it was astrology when I was an astrologer, or when I was a massage therapist, or even now as a writer and a teacher, he would say, don't be dependent on anyone else. Be dependent on spirit. Be dependent on spirit. Live out of your consciousness. And then you become capital S, self-reliant. And the more you are able to engage that adventure, the less doubt you tend to have. Because even in those moments when things aren't going the way you think they should, if you're really watching and paying attention, and you're patient, you do your best with situations, but you let go when you've just seemed to be bashing your head into a wall and not getting anywhere. You let go and you say, let's just see what happens. And you have to be patient. Maybe it seems like nothing is going on. And then sure enough, a day, a few weeks, a month, even years later, all of a sudden, something presents itself which either helps you resolve a conflict, or to make steps forward within your life, or to have an opportunity that you knew was possible for you, but maybe the time wasn't there. Maybe the time wasn't right just yet. And again, in order to be able to let this kind of thing happen, number one, you do have to be a responsible person who can function in the world and do their best. Because remember, your body, your mind, your personality, your life is a vehicle for spirit too. And the more in shape that is, the easier it will be for the opportunities to come through, or the realizations to come through. But then there are other situations where no matter how capable you are, no matter how functional you are, no matter how successful you are, some things it's just not the time yet. And that's when you have to be patient. And by learning to meditate and expand and explore, trust a bigger picture, the mystery of life, you begin to recognize that as a possibility for you. And that is a subtle thing that takes time, attention, and patience. Now, another thing I wanted to discuss related to getting through doubt or difficulties is a little more practical. So we'll discuss this, and then we'll take some time to meditate together. One student wrote to me and said that she'd been meditating just fine, but what had happened recently was some negative emotions came up, or some things that were kind of disturbing in meditation came up. And so she just quit meditating. Now, she was still reading. She was still reading her inspirational literature. She was still living her yogic lifestyle. But meditation she just couldn't do because things were troubling her there. And I understand that. And I understand the reason one would stop meditating when that happens. But what we have to remember is stopping in those situations. It's kind of like if you have a car and you're washing your car and you come to a place where there's just some tar on there, and it's been going beautifully, you've been washing your car, or you've been meditating, washing your consciousness, and then you get to this part that just won't get out, and you don't have any of that bug dissolver, tar dissolver stuff, and so I'm just not going to do it. Well, you've got the car mostly clean, so now you come to a situation where it's more difficult. Well, you just have to work harder at it. And that doesn't mean that you force your way through it. It just means that you learn to do something else. And number one, you'll hear me say it all the time, again and again and again, because it's time that us yogis accept this truth of self-development. If it's a common thing, if you go into meditation and you're disturbed by anxiety or negative emotions, find yourself a counselor or a therapist. That's the only way it's going to work. You need an extra set of eyes to help you through it, who have skills that can help you through it, to recognize what's really going on there. Because we have to remember the unconscious has no time, which means that maybe everything in life is just great. But now your consciousness feels safe. And it's saying, well, you feel pretty good now, so let's bring this stuff up and let's try to process it. Let's try to move through it so that you can deep down inside develop more energy, more strength, so you're not always just trying to press down, hold down this thing that you haven't dealt with. That's what happens. And if you can't deal with it on your own, which I wouldn't advise, again, harming yourself trying to do that if it's a recurrent thing, find yourself a counselor, work through it. They will be able to help you pinpoint, where is this coming from? Because it might not have anything to do with right now. And what happens is, once you recognize that, and with help you work through it, you're going to find your meditations flow so much easier. It's as if a whole wellspring of new energy is revealed to you, and a new depth of understanding is revealed to you, because you're not having to waste your energy or your time holding down something that you just don't want to see. So that's something you need to keep in mind. Another thing you can do when this happens, again, assuming it's not something pathological, and we all have pathological things, so we're not picking on anybody here. If you're a human being in this world, there's going to be something. But two other things you can do. Number one, if you know some pranayama exercises, deep breathing exercises, well, when you're meditating, when these things happen, you don't have to sit there and torture yourself, but what you can do is say, all right, for the remainder of my time, I'm going to breathe more deeply. I'm going to focus on the breath. Or you do more vigorous alternate nostril breathing. You do some kind of safe pranayama with a little more intensity, so your awareness is on your body and your awareness is on the breath. And why is this important? This is a yogic technique. This is why we have pranayama, because when we reach points that are like congestion in our energy field, it'll come out as though depression, anxiety, things like this. Well, what you can do is, by focusing on the body and the breath, you're letting your mind release it, so you're not having to dwell on it, you're not re-traumatizing yourself. But if it's possible, the depth of the breath is circulating more prana, more life force through the body, through the chakras, through the energy system, through the emotional energy system, such that it will help to flush out anything that can be flushed out in that way. And what you'll find is, in time, it might take a while, but in time, it's as if it is dissolved. That is why they talk about the practices of pranayama as a significant way to burn through one's karma. It's helping to flush out, if possible, conditioning which can be released without the help of a counselor or another perspective. So that's one thing you can do. And how long is that going to take for you? I don't know. It could be a few days. It could be one session. It could be a few months. I remember when I began doing more intensive pranayama many years ago, I would do intense pranayama for a half hour to an hour, and for the first 6 months all I was doing was getting to the peak experience and crying, being upset. And then after that I got to a point where all this anger came up and I was just angry. But then what happened after that is, this is about 9 months afterwards, instead of the peak experiences bringing up this kind of emotional situation, I began remembering very pleasant memories from childhood. Just amazing memories. They weren't like big events, but they were these beautiful, significant moments of being in nature, or being out in the woods, or seeing the sunlight across the clouds, or being with a friend. And all of these things came up. So now I had moved through a lot of this negative conditioning that I was able to move through with the breathing. And what was happening, it was revealing to me more peaceful, satisfying states of consciousness. So we can do that. But another thing that we can do is prayer. Now, if you experience anxiety, if you experience fear, if you experience depression, if you experience anger, bitterness, whatever, if you have an idea of why you experience those things, well, here's what you can do. Instead of doing your regular meditation routine, although I would still recommend that you do your pranayama exercises because they are good exercise, you can spend your meditation time in prayer, praying for those people who've experienced similar situations, praying that they experience relief, seeing them in light, seeing them at peace, seeing them with wisdom and understanding with the situation that they're in. So you would think about what do you feel, and then you want to pray for the rest of the world, other people who experience that they be assisted, that they be helped, that they be relieved. And you want to not just beg, you want to imagine that these people throughout the world are in light, are in love, are nurtured, are supported, so that they can grow through these things. And how long is that going to take? Who knows? But that is a wonderful way that if you come to a point in your meditation where you're sidetracked by distracting emotions or negative emotions, that you can still use that time for meditation. So you keep the habit, the momentum going, but now you are tapping into another tool in your toolbox that turns your awareness away from being caught up in whatever loop is going on in your consciousness, and you're intending, sending well-being to others. And since there is no separation between ourselves and others, what you might find is that it helps you too. But don't think about it that way. You're not doing it for yourself. You want to think about it as though you are intentionally using your consciousness, your awareness, your time, your spirit to send compassion, blessings, love, well-being to all those people in the world who, like you, experience this particular problem. And you do it for the duration of your meditation, then you let it go. And you might do that multiple days. So these are some ways to think about dealing with doubt or dealing with obstacles and blocks in life or your meditation process. And there's nothing about any of these things which is going to make all difficulties go away. They will make many of them go away, because anytime you start living in a more optimistic, supportive fashion, you tend to make choices which support generally a better outcome. But we know that you look around and life is going to happen to all of us, no matter who we are. So it'll make it a little bit easier when the inevitable comes our way. And there are many things which are inevitable, because we live in a world where there's a good bit of confusion, but we don't have to succumb to it. We can rise above it. We can go more inward to this point of spirit, this realizing the source of things is spirit. And of course you'll have to wrestle with, well, if everything is spirit, how did this bad thing happen? Well, that's part of the process too. And you have to be willing to dive into that for however long it takes. Now, in our previous Kriya Yoga Sunday services, we would have a little talk as we did, and then we would do some meditation. And I got in the habit of leading a little bit of a chant before we meditated. So I'm going to do that today too. If you can, if you're in a place where you can listen and chant along, that's wonderful. Go ahead and join in, because chanting has a powerful effect on our physiology as well as our heart, our mind, and our emotions. It can be very uplifting. If you can't chant along, that's okay. Just listen. A very important meditation technique is just learning to hear what is going on. So just listen. And then we'll move on to a silent meditation. So this chant, you may recognize it. It's by Paramahansa Yogananda. It's very simple. I think it's called Blue Lotus Feet. Let's see if I remember the words. So the words are, engrossed are the bees of my heart at the blue lotus feet of my Divine Mother. So engrossed are the bees of my heart at the blue lotus feet of my Divine Mother. And then the second part is Divine Mother, Divine Mother, Divine Mother, Divine Mother. It's very simple. And when you chant this, you can have a sense as though you are recognizing that aspect of spirit which is nurturing to us, supportive of us. And recognize that it is within your consciousness and it does exist. And as you chant, in a sense, you are attuning to acknowledging this reality. Engrossed are the bees of my heart at the blue lotus feet of my Divine Mother. Engrossed are the bees of my heart at the blue lotus feet of my Divine Mother. Divine Mother, my Divine Mother, Divine Mother, my Divine Mother, Divine Mother, my Divine Mother, Divine Mother, my Divine Mother. Engrossed are the bees of my heart at the blue lotus feet of my Divine Mother. Engrossed are the bees of my heart at the blue lotus feet of my Divine Mother. Divine Mother, my Divine Mother, Divine Mother, my Divine Mother, Divine Mother, my Divine Mother, Divine Mother, my Divine Mother. Engrossed are the bees of my heart at the blue lotus feet of my Divine Mother. Engrossed are the bees of my heart at the blue lotus feet of my Divine Mother. Divine Mother, my Divine Mother, Divine Mother, my Divine Mother, Divine Mother, my Divine Mother, Divine Mother, my Divine Mother. Engrossed are the bees of my heart at the blue lotus feet of my Divine Mother. Engrossed grow star the bees of my heart, at the blue lotus feet of my divine mother. Divine mother, 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 my divine mother. Grow star the bees of my heart, at the blue lotus feet of my divine mother. Grow star the bees of my heart, at the blue lotus feet of my divine mother. Divine mother, 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 my divine mother. Grow star bees of my heart, at the blue lotus feet of my divine mother. Grow star the bees of my heart, at the blue lotus feet of my divine mother. Divine mother, 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 my divine mother. So now sitting up straight, closing your eyes and turning your attention within. Take a moment to let go of anything that's troubling you, or any thoughts, any emotions. Give yourself permission to detach from those things for the time we have in meditation together. Feel the body, feel the breath. And acknowledge the ocean of consciousness, the ocean of spirit within and around you, which exists throughout your waking, your sleeping, your dreaming, which is the source of this body, the source of this life. And if you can't feel that, just wonder, what would it be like if you could? What would it be like if you are aware of this field, this timeless consciousness? And just breathe. Now the meditation technique we'll use today is simple. A mantra, Om on the inhale, peace on the exhale. And so bring your awareness to your heart, space in the center of your chest. Feel your chest and feel the breath as it rises and falls through the belly up into the chest. And on the inhale, you want to mentally hear the syllable Om in your mind resonating. On the exhale, you want to mentally hear the word peace, but you also want to remember a time when you were at peace and feel the physical sensation of what peace felt like in your body then. So Om on the inhale, peace on the exhale. Letting go of any other distractions. Letting this be your point of focus. And remember, the secret to making this work isn't just sitting there reciting Om peace on the inhale and exhale. The secret to making it work is on the inhale, Om, let all else fall away. On the exhale, when you hear or recite the word peace internally, your consciousness is active. You're not trying to put yourself into a trance. So you want to actively remember the feeling of peace. If you can't do that easily, then you want to think back to times when you were at peace, when you remember things feeling all right in the world. And then every time you get to the peace part of Om, peace, you remember that. And you might go to multiple memories, but the point is to do whatever it takes to experience, to generate, to focus on, to practice samadhi or oneness with the state of peace, which might require the thoughts or the memories of times when you were at peace previously. So Om on the inhale, peace on the exhale. Now I want to take our awareness and lift it up. So now you've held your attention at the heart. Now bring your awareness up through the central channel, up through to the sixth chakra, the frontal regions of the brain. Just feel that area. If you need to touch the area, rub your forehead in a circle to bring your awareness there, or just give it a little massage, that's okay. Just whatever it takes to get your feeling up here. And continue. Om on the inhale. You can imagine as though as you breathe in, breath is flowing in through this part of your body. As you exhale, breath is flowing out. Peace on the exhale. And remember, do whatever it takes. Use memories. Anything. That every time you recite peace, that you are feeling it within your body. That will activate the hormones, the nervous system, the endocrine system, to begin, in a sense, tuning you more to a state of peace, conditioning you to peace instead of whatever your normal state is. So Om on the inhale, peace on the exhale. Get into it. Be dynamic. And what I like to do during this particular kind of meditation technique is add a feeling of, I imagine as though either breath or water is flowing into the sixth chakra, and as it comes in, it's like water rushing up on the shore of a beach. And it's just cleansing, opening, pulling away anything that causes tension or stress. And on the exhale, it flows back out. And so it's as if I have this sense of refreshing water or an ocean flowing in. And on the exhale, it just flows back out, which helps to give a sense of expansion, release of tension in between the eyebrows, which helps to deepen the experience. Om on the inhale, peace on the exhale. Whenever you practice meditation, if you have to, and sometimes you do, you have to remind yourself that you are supported in this practice. That we live in an ocean of consciousness, an ocean of spirit. And that there are powers within spirit, within this ocean, which are responsive to you. And if you can allow the support to be there, if you can recognize that the lives of those teachers, of those role models that you have, that they were there, they existed to provide you with this opportunity, then you know you're supported. You still have to do your own work, but acknowledging, recognizing the support that is there. When I meditate, I often think about students that I have personally on the Patreon site who pay attention to the YouTube videos, the Kriya Yoga Online podcast, anyone who tunes in. And I imagine I see them in light and clarity and wisdom as they make their way through this crazy world. And you can do that too for your fellow meditators. So there is a subtle current of support there. And I know Mr. Davis and Yogananda, Sri Yukteswar, others, they did this as well. Sent out this sense of support. Lived their life writing, teaching, so that you had practical support. So try to remember that in meditation from time to time and wish it for others, that they recognize that they see it. And throughout the day, just wonder, how is it there? And in the wondering of how it's there, maybe something will present itself to reveal it within your consciousness. So we'll just spend a little more time chanting. If you want to stay in your meditative state and listen, that's fine. If you want to chant along, you're welcome to. Same thing. So those of you who are here, if you like, we're going to be doing this for every Sunday in February. If you have any friends or family or people you know who are interested in meditation and Kriya Yoga and would like to participate, looks like we have room for 25 other folks. So if you want to invite them, go ahead and use the login information that you have, forward it to them, tell them what it's all about, and hopefully we won't run out of space, but it'd be wonderful if you want to extend the invitation to others, again, if you think it'd be helpful and of benefit to them. So in the meantime, keep meditating, keep reading and studying, exercise, eat your vegetables, get enough rest, take care of yourself, be kind to yourself and others, and do good work. So be well.